Okay, we're just doing it. And we're going to try and get this one under the wire. And if the end of this video is my feet zooming out of frame and then there's like 8 hours worth of end footage, because I don't know how to edit yet. I don't know. It's because I didn't quite get it under the wire and I had to run to work. But we've been slacking on the video content. I've been slacking on my podcast. That's due too. Also, apparently, according to my first quarter check, I've been doing this instead of writing. I didn't really realize that. But it's all good, because Seth Williams, breaking news. Breaking news. I've got drops now. Pretty cool, right? He has a new date of birth. Oh, in fact, he has a different date of birth is probably the way of putting it than a lot of us actually had in our databases. I think, according to FS Spaceman, Dave Wright from the Taylor 2 Rivals podcast, he does some YouTube videos. You should really check him out. I consider him kind of like my baby Jedi Padawan, because, you know, I helped him get his database started, really. Now, he's great. He's awesome. Easily as good as me. And, you know, has a better accent, because, you know, it's American football. He should have an American accent, really. What was I? Anyway, he put out a thread saying that the Seth Williams on Twitter, that his date of birth had been listed as wrong, and this changes this, and this. So I DM'd him, as I do. I was like, wait, what? And yeah, apparently Dane Brugler was the first one Spaceman ever heard mention it, but it's since been pretty well confirmed, and even DLF, the company that I write for and I'm meant to be writing for, has updated their Devi age table, and he was actually born in 2000, not 1999. My comment on the thread was, this is going to make people who think analytics sound silly make it really easy to make analytics sound silly, because he was born in 2000, not 1999. Now you like him more. Your process sucks. Well, only if you straw man it, because it didn't change it a lot, but doing something that's slightly higher above average does make it slightly better. Now, Seth Williams, I've already got a video out on him, and a patron was like, can we get a redo now we know the new age? And not the new age, the actual age. And I was like, sure, I'll try. So that's this video. I'm going to rerun some of my opinions about Seth Williams. Now, in truth, again, if you don't straw man the process, he didn't move much, and it actually sent me down a rabbit hole of tilting and late night research that has led to that last video, and this one being slightly under the wire, and also some of the reasons I haven't been doing a lot of podcasting and stuff. I love the research, man. Sorry. Because it's not that I didn't understand it, and I didn't really find anything new, but I wanted a better way of representing certain things and see if there was any extra insight I could lay on top with team. Once again, I went back to team adjustments. Everyone's always like, you got to adjust by team and competition level, and every time I delve down that rabbit hole, it's just years off my life with no good results. It doesn't help, but context is useful. And I want to be able to represent that context a little bit better. So, yeah, I think I've come up with something. It's not in the new database update yet, but it'll be in this version of the database. And we're going to go... I'm not going to rerun Seth Williams' production, because it's basically... Well, it's the same. It's just a year earlier. So most of the things I said about where he played, who he was playing with, and how well he compares to this class are true. I still really like Seth Williams, and I like him more than my model does, because the new age bumped him a little bit. Just a little bit. And in fact, because of some of the ways I recalculated some of the averages, everyone got brought down and some got brought up. And so the numbers are like it's 6. His new pre-draft model score is 6.1, which I think is what it was before. But it's because I adjusted everything for that team thing I was playing with. And so it's actually technically better. I shouldn't have just even mentioned that. It's not like any of you are eagle-eyeing the point decimal places. But he is slightly higher in my model, and he rose a little bit. But in terms of my overall ranks, I did up him a little bit because of my own biases, to be honest, but also because of likelihood, and we'll dig into it in this video. That's what I want to dig into here. What the context of his new breakout age did in terms of the process of statistical analytics, how it compares to past players, and also perhaps just some further takes on Seth Williams, because I've been looking at these players increasingly since the last time I did this video. So please, can I get off the big screen now? Awesome. And let's go look at the database and let's talk about it. How about that? All right. So, do I hide these two? Yeah, let's hide these two lines just because we got limited screen time as it is. All right. So, Seth Williams, I said on Twitter, Seth Williams has a Jalen Reagor problem, and the only comment I got on that was, what does that even mean? And good question, because I was kind of off in it myself, to be honest. But what I was trying to say was that I liked Jalen Reagor a lot last year. I put him in my first tier of wide receivers, and I recently updated the ranks sheet that I'm tracking ranks for this year, and Superflex, and I added a receipts tab, which has my previous two rookie classes pre and post draft ranks, so you can see exactly how wrong I was. And I can track exactly how wrong I was in the hope of getting better. But I had Jalen Reagor in my first tier of wide receivers really from the very start, but even after the draft I had CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Reagor, and Justin Jefferson all in my first tier, and I loved them all, and I ended up with a lot of Justin Jefferson comparatively, because everyone loves CeeDee Lamb. Only a few people love Jalen Reagor, but he was falling into a certain draft range because of his draft capital, and for some reason no one liked the wide receiver because he was a wide receiver 2 on his own team, technically, and so I got a lot, I feel pretty good about my Justin Jefferson exposure. But yeah, I love Jalen Reagor, and part of the reason why I did was because the same reason I like that Seth Williams, but Jalen Reagor failed to rise as much as I wanted him to. And you can go back, I think I was actually making videos on prospects last year and see what I said about Jalen Reagor, I guess. I definitely podcasted about him a lot. And I said he had an average problem, because if you look at his production, it looks like this. His best year was fantastic. His first year was actually at the average, which is fairly rare. We've talked about before. Jamar Chase in this year's class, CeeDee Lamb in last year's class. You don't always have your best season at age 18, even if you start playing at age 18, even if you're good. That's the thing. It's fairly rare to do, and it's part of why age helps. But his second year was just phenomenal. It's kind of off the charts. In his third year, there was a lot of, he had a bad quarterback, the whole team production was down, and so we kind of wanted to write it off. But Jalen Reagor got this average problem of having one great season and two on-the-line seasons. Overall, breaking down his profile, I still really like him, but he's dropped in DLF ADP. He's hit the 94% bust in terms of the way we move in ADP bracket, and that's really awkward. There's since been, he was injured and stuff, and I don't really go into a lot of those narratives for my valuation. I'm still hanging on to this rookie profile, and at this point he's looking less likely based on what he did in his first year, but I still like him a lot. So that's concerning that he comes to mind when I'm thinking about Seth Williams. But Seth Williams' production, and this is his new graph, by the way, looks very different than Jalen Reagor, right? He's got, again, that first year kind of on the average, and then the next 2 years he's above average. Actually, this is his first graph before I updated his age, and here it is now that I've updated his age. You can see that it's basically the same thing, but if you look at his age 19 and 20 season, it looks significantly above the average of wide receivers who have at least one top 24 season, instead of being marginally above. Now, the problem with this, and why it doesn't change the statistical profile very much, is that my model, and I understand, that this is not exponential. Being further above the line doesn't make you better compared to past prospects. It just means you compare well to past prospects. That's a ditch of a. I said ditch. You see, I didn't swear. Can't catch me. Where was I? It means you're good. It's a threshold. You can be above. You can be below. You can't be more above and have it more significant. And so when my pre-draft model, but I love the look of this graph. This is where my bias comes in. Like, whoa, yeah, look at that fancy line. Look how far above the line he is. I bet his dominator rating looks great. And so we get the nerd boner over it. Now that is because there is a statistically higher likelihood of breaking out when you're better at an early age, and that's just now increased. But his overall statistical profile doesn't change that much. So, instead of Jalen Rago, I've been comparing this class. More and more, this class brings to mind the 2015 class, for reasons we can talk about on podcasts or in other videos. And so I thought, instead of just reaching for Jalen Rago, who we haven't seen the full story on, and his profile looks decidedly different. Seth Williams doesn't have this one great year in these 2 years. He has this decent first year, and then 2 great years at a worse team in the same conference, right? Or in a just as good a conference, let's say, because he played in the SEC West, even if it is for Auburn. All right. So that's the story. That's why I was comparing him to Jalen Rago, and that's why his statistical profile doesn't change much, but I have the nerd boner for it, because there is a trend, there is a likelihood change when you have younger ages performing well at younger ages. So, what's the new thing that I was doing? I'm going to have to hide most of this to bring it onto screen. And here you can see his their breakout ages, and you can see that Seth Williams just looks pretty good. It just looks pretty nice. You know what I mean? Sorry, shouldn't have done that, because I'm going to need that year column. Damn, we're not going to get this under the wire, are we? I'm going to be running to work. Anyway, okay. So, where are you, Seth? Stop hiding from me. Why do you hate me? No, seriously, I can't see him anymore. Ah, there he is. You see, he's still further down than my nerd interest would seem to suggest. Now, that's not necessarily just because of this class. It's because, again, when you compare statistical averages or statistically probable stats to have significance and cross my models, that's just where he ends up. Plenty of players break out from this range of the pre-draft model, though. And again, my pre-draft model is only so good. Honestly, I like to read it more than I like to trust it as a ranking engine. So this is a thing that I've basically created. I've conference-adjusted team stats to make them have a relatively similar predictiveness as conference stats by themselves. Age stats were just already better than all three. Again, if I was to bring over those testing columns, age tests significantly more likely to be an indicator of a player having a successful NFL career. Conference is better than team, but I was able to just about rise team stats to the level of conference stats. And this is just using yards per team pass attempt, not dominator rating or market share receiving yards. But essentially what it is a look over of how well they compare to players in their conference in the recent era that they were playing, and then how well they compare at yards per team pass attempts on their teams, and then how well they compare in yards per team pass attempt based on the age of players who've had successful seasons in the NFL. And again, age tends to be the best, but I think this made team just as good, if not slightly worse, than conference. And this gives us a look across the three aspects of their situation. The ages they were playing compared to past prospects, the team they were playing on compared to players that played on that team recently, and the conference they were playing on compared to players playing in that conference that they were playing in. And so you get this kind of three-tier look of how they fit in. Again, it's not as good as modeling. It's not even as good as those graphs. If you would graph everything out, you'd probably have a better understanding. But I think it's a good basic look. In this situation, are they above or below in these three different contexts? Now, the reason we can't combine all three and create a mega model instead of me modeling against these stats, which are actually highlighted in green, these are the stats that my pre-draft model uses, anyway, is because too few players play at every age, on every team, and in every conference. Once you add the three modifiers together, or any two, your sample size shrinks to the point of not good enough, really. If you leave all three separate, though, there's a decent enough sample size to, again, get a decent R-squared value, a decent probability value, and they have relevance. Once you try to start combining them, which would be the ideal, there's just not a large, at least for a little fake nerd like me, to combine them well enough. But I'm going on about it too much. So, where's Seth Williams? You'll see he's positive in compared to his conference. He's positive compared to his team. He's kind of on the line compared to the average, or the average of players who've had top 24 seasons in the NFL. However, again, because these stats, like, I think the broad testing for age, yards per team, pass attempt adjusted, is between 18 and 21%, or 0.18 to 0.12 predictiveness of explaining points per game over the first 3 seasons. What in context, that's really good, but again, turn it into a percentage, you're explaining 18 to 21% of the variance. That's not great, which is why you have so many hits and why statistics can't perfectly model, not to mention the fact lots of these stats have multicollinearity and lots of other statistical problems, because the NFL is a small sample size trap. Can't emphasize that enough, which is why when we have to shrink our samples by combining things, like it gets pretty useless. And so the best way I found, as a fake nerd who can't masterfully create better statistics out of thin air by making up numbers, is just by looking at them in the 3 contexts, then comparing that to past prospects. Again, if you model it out, these variables actually tend to work a little bit better, or they work a little bit better for me. Best yards per team pass attempt, the average of yards per team pass attempt, the average compared to their age, again, which is kind of like the column I've just created, but it's slightly different because it's slightly different. I don't want to dig into it too much here. And then their best dominator above the average for their age, and also their average compared to the ages of past prospects. Those are the ones my model tends to like. If you look at Seth Williams across those and do the modelly work, it comes up with a positive score, but it compares them to too many players like, and this is why I mentioned 2015, because I think that's going to make a better comparison in your head than Jalen Reagor right now. It's seen too many, let's say it's war weary, Devontae Parker's, and it's seen too many Nelson Aguilar's to rank that particular profile too highly. 6.1 is positive. The average of players who break out in the NFL across my pre-draft model is around about 6.1 to 6.4 in my pre-draft model. That doesn't make him more likely. That's just a good benchmark to know for what makes a good score and a bad score in that pre-draft model. So, that's why, because when you look at his actual stats across the board, it compares to lots of good players, but also lots of bad players, and so it puts him in this positive but overall negative range. But overall not exemplary range like Bateman and Atwell end up in. But the fact that Bateman and Atwell are markedly different also shows you that they are also built a little different, to the point that when you look at N'Keal Harry's and Corey Coleman's, not Corey Coleman, because Corey Coleman looked like trash, Corey Davis, then you start to wonder if being too positive is an indication that there was something weird going on with the team, or it was too easy a competition level, even though this team is now conference adjusted, for basically by the difference of what the team was doing compared to what the conference was doing. We bring it all down or up depending on how well that team compares to the conference. Is a modifier that goes on in there. But not really, because if you sort by these things, you'll get Demaryius Thomas and Des Bryant, and lots of the great players scored exponentially well, which is why the model overall likes players that do exponentially well, and is a little more cautious on those that are closer to the average. But I know, because I can't do more than linear regression models, that this thing isn't exponential. And so it does take a little bit of reading, and so me and the model have a back and forth in a nerdy type way, like we argue a lot, and that's how my ranks are produced. Anyway, where was I? Seth Williams. Oh yeah, so when I look at Seth Williams, I see an overall positive profile with a young breakout age at a poor team in a good conference, which is worrying, but it's good that in that situation, he is above average across the board. I really like Seth Williams' profile when I look at it. The model is a little bit concerned that he compares well to a lot of prospects that did okay, and a lot of prospects that did not so good, and it doesn't have this linear effect of being so far above the average that he's exponentially better in college than lots of these good players, and it drags his overall score down. I think that's the best description I can do of it right now, right here. So, yeah, do I have my years marked? Yeah, so let's go take a quick look, and I'll show you why I'm thinking. I would love to say he looks like Stefon Diggs, because Stefon Diggs scored about a 6.7 in my pre-draft model, but that's higher, you'll note, than Seth Williams. And also when you look at his production in his conference situation, his team situation, and even his age situation, is significantly better than Williams. He was more productive in his situation at a worse conference, at a worse team, as usual caveat that gets thrown out about Stefon Diggs. So Stefon Diggs did just look better. Me and the model both agree Stefon Diggs was better. And so when I look at 2015, I end up on these Nelson Aguilar and Devontae Parker profiles. Now, I like both players. I like Devontae Parker significantly more. One, because he's a Louisville boy. Not really, but he played at Louisville. And he had the better breakout age at a 20% threshold. And because I'm a holdover from a past age, despite RotoViz's insistence, I still like that 20% threshold. I mean, as an indicator, I still like it. So, Devontae Parker is really where I came out. When you look at the three stats in the one stat in the three situations comparatively, that's kind of what you see, right? He's slightly above average in terms of his conference, in terms of his team. Devontae Parker was a little below average in terms of his age, but it's within the error margin around that 0 mark, right? And minus 0.2 versus plus 0.08, I think Seth Williams was at. It's like a variance of 0.05 or something like that. So he's within a similar range, and so that's where I end up on Parker. Does that mean Seth Williams is the new Devontae Parker? Not really, because we're not comparing how they play or where they play. We're comparing how well they played, how good they were in their situation in the years they played, compared to their conference, compared to their team, and compared to how well they look compared to players who've broken out before. And so it's, again, my way of thinking about things is a little off kilter, so try not to I'm not making a direct comparison so much as they performed similar to the three contexts in very different situations, and they like to play very differently. I don't know, I would have to probably watch football to get a good idea of that, but that's the name that comes to mind most of all, and why I think Seth Williams doesn't rise drastically in my profile. My model's just got too many Devontae Parkers in here. Now, Devontae Parker also has third round draft capital, and I think that's going to be really important for Seth Williams, but if he gets lower than that, and he probably will, I'm still going to be interested, because overall, I love his profile. My model's a little more cautious because he doesn't have that exponentially high above the averages kind of a look. But I know this isn't an exponential equation, really. I just can't model any better than that. My model doesn't know there are other kind of models, or that we cheat on it, and refuses to acknowledge their existence if they did. So, yeah, it likes him about as much as it liked Devontae Parker. And that's where it comes out at. I will say that if you compare Parker directly to Seth Williams was a lot more dominant in his situation. He just wasn't that special blend of role and efficiency that is yards per team pass attempt. He doesn't stand out in that any better than Devontae Parker, but if you look at his dominator above average, or just his dominator rating, he was significantly higher in his best years and on average throughout his career. Again, 230% dominated years, 230% years in market share of receiving yards is something Parker never managed. So Seth Williams looks more dominant in his situation, but he used that dominance to be about as above average in yards per team pass attempt as a Devontae Parker. So what does that all boil down to? I should have had that up. I mean, I should have my rankings pulled up. I've moved Seth Williams up within his tier. He still doesn't jump into the the top tier with Rashad Bateman and Jamar Chase, and the other guy I have in there is Rondell Moore. But in that second tier of guys with really positive signs on their profile that I like, Seth Williams is kind of teetering at the bottom of that tier because I was trusting my model a little bit. But now he has a younger age, and my biases come into play within a tier. I'm like, yeah, Seth Williams. And so I pushed him up significantly, but he's still kind of within that same tier. Model really likes him, needs draft capital. People who like looking at how good these guys look in shorts and t-shirts, they're probably going to love Seth Williams because I paid vague attention to it, and he's the right size and the right weight and the right BMI, which doesn't matter, but it's good to know that people will be interested in him, and therefore NFL teams might be more interested in him, because preferably we want top 3 round draft capital. I think he falls into that range of someone a team will take a a swing on, which is why I start thinking about Stephon Diggs, T.Y. Hilton, and those age-adjusted breakout stars. But he, taking into context his situation, his conference, his team, and the age of past players, he doesn't look quite as good as those guys, but he's within the range, man. I don't like him as much as I like Stephon Diggs, especially at a falling value if he falls in the draft slightly, even to the 4th round. But I will be targeting him in a similar way to Stephon Diggs, because Devontae Parker got that 1st-round draft capital, and even though that's a better statistical comparison in my head, Seth Williams isn't going to get that, and so in rookie drafts, he feels more like a Stephon Diggs. Ultimately, the answer here is that Seth, like all of these players, are very unlikely to break out. But picking my poison in what they did in college, I think Seth Williams looks good. And the reason I like this look, by the way, the 3 context stats, is because we can do this. So, he played at Auburn, right? Alright, so if we look at all players that have played in Auburn in the database, and then go back and look at these context-adjusted stats, I'm going to sort by age because it's the best. You see basically that Seth Williams is... oh, you can't see that at all. Oh, hang on. Yeah, there we go. Across these stats, sorted by the age column, he comes up as one of 4 players to actually have production that compares somewhat well when you adjust by age to past players who've had success. Notice he also comes out at the bottom of that list from Auburn, and Darian Davis and Mary Blake and Sammy Coates, who I do remember going to the Steelers, and everyone getting excited about the Steelers, so I actually ended up with relatively little Sammy Coates because the broken clock narrative actually, clocked everyone there, because Steelers wide receiver, but I actually kind of liked him in terms of his overall production. But I got saved from it by broken clock narratives who pushed him up boards way too high. But I don't think this means he's a worse prospect than any of these guys, because he's playing in a different era. And again, these exponentially high above the averages at a low-producing team are actually more concerning. And again, when you break into their stats a little bit more in depth, you kind of see that in their dominator ratings. So, yeah, Auburn is a problem. Don't get me wrong. Both in terms of draft capital and in terms of the fact that stats can be slightly inflated when you're trying comparing to other players playing from other teams. But, and again, I can't insist on this enough, we don't have a great way of adjusting those team production stats that actually make them more predictive. Instead, age is one I continuously rely on. And where Seth Williams is checking a lot of other boxes, including breakout ages, which these players did not share in common, by the way. He looks very different in terms of when he was breaking out, which is why while these guys were mediocre and didn't do anything in the NFL, including Sammy Coates, but he did get some draft capital and people overdrafted him because of the Steelers, Seth Williams doesn't have the Steelers on his profile. He has the age at which he was breaking out and having a statistically above average profile in his corner. And that's my nerd boner right there. That's what I like to see, man. And so yeah, I like Seth Williams a lot. I continue to like him slightly better than my model. But that's where I'm at. Where did I think he came out? We're looking. We're doing it live. My feet's going to have to disappear at the corner of the frame here in a second. But rookie ranks. And remember, pre-draft rookie ranks are only worth so much. This is just based on production, which is nowhere near as good as once you start combining draft capital and then take into account dynasty, how you play the market kind of stuff. But yeah, here's my first tier: Jamar Chase, Bateman, and more. My second tier, I have a lot of players I'm having a hard time separating out in this class so far, but we'll get there. But for right now, Seth Williams falls into that tier. I've got him as a wide receiver 7. I've got him slightly below Taylor Wallace, who I believe I've done a video on. I like him a lot. Doesn't have as early a breakout age. But again, I'm not going to do a live comparison. I like him less than Devontae Smith, frankly, because Smith's going to get all the draft capital and hype, and if you want him, you're going to have to draft him higher. Elijah Moore is probably the guy I'm over. I have a lot more interest in than most players in Dynasty right now, and so I'm just going to keep him at the top of the tier, kind of to show the difference between... I really like Elijah Moore's production, and I'm not scared about his height. And so Seth Williams falls to 7, but he's in this really interesting tier that I have to do more work on separating out. I do have him slightly above Dimey Brown now, who has a fairly similar profile when you take into account those those context scores I was talking about. But oh, now I screwed everything up because it's organized by something else, isn't it? Yeah, he looks fairly similar to Dimey Brown, but Seth Williams has better breakout ages, and he has a breakout age at both thresholds, so I like him a little bit more than Mr. Brown, who's getting a lot more hype right now. Anyway, I better get out of here because I'm late. Feels good though, man. Getting this out of the way means I can actually record a podcast, and I have some videos to start uploading and getting out to you all. Really appreciate you checking out. If you did, check Seth Williams out in the database. It's free. It's in the down below area on YouTube, whatever we call that around here. And yeah, appreciate it. Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm out. I got nothing left. I like Seth Williams a lot. I continue to like him more than my model, but he did rise slightly because of his younger breakout age. And if you're wondering when he's actually born, he was born in 2000 instead of 1999. That is confirmed. See, you got drops now. That's not a noise I made with my mouth at all. That's a professional drop.